German Shepherd chained for years, stretching his paws desperately for love until a woman did this. Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new to our channel. In the quiet outskirts of a small town, where houses were scattered and each property stretched far enough to afford privacy, Martha, a retired school teacher, made her daily walk along the edge of the woods that bordered this sleepy community. It was on one such walk, with the sun warming her back and birds singing in the trees, that her life and the life of a desolate soul would change unexpectedly. For years, a German Shepherd named Benji had been confined to a dreary corner of a rundown yard, chained to a dilapidated doghouse that barely shielded him from the elements. The chain was rusted, a cruel shackle around his once majestic neck. The yard was a dusty expanse, bereft of grass, with a grim fence encircling it. Occasionally, Benji would catch glimpses of life beyond his prison, a car driving by, children playing in the distance, the world moving without him. His food bowl was more often empty than not, and his water bowl was a cracked basin, dried under the oppressive sun or frozen in the biting cold. Benji's once robust body had withered with neglect. His fur, which had been lush and glossy, was now matted and thinned from malnutrition and despair. His eyes, once bright and keen, had dulled, reflecting years of unspoken sorrows. Yet, within him, a faint spark of hope glimmered, a stubborn refusal to surrender his spirit to the chain that bound him. On that fateful afternoon, as Martha approached the old fence, something unusual caught her eye. It was the sight of Paws, desperate and dirty, scratching weakly at the dirt. Curious and concerned, she stepped closer, her heart tightening as she spotted Benji. He was lying there, a gaunt figure of abject misery and resignation, his paws reaching out through the fence as if begging for a touch, for acknowledgement of his existence. Martha's heart broke for the lonely creature. "Oh, dear God," she whispered, her voice a mix of shock and compassion. She could see his ribs through his sparse fur, feel the heavy silence of his isolation. Moved beyond words, she knelt by the fence, her eyes meeting Benji's. In that moment, a profound connection was forged. Here was a being, forgotten by the world, still capable of trust, still hoping for kindness. Compelled by a surge of resolve, Martha knew she couldn't leave Benji to his fate. She returned home only long enough to gather supplies, food, water, and a blanket, and return to the fence. Benji, recognizing her as the first sign of hope in years, thumped his tail against the ground. With gentle words and soothing tones, Martha fed Benji through the fence, his tail wagging weakly as he ate more eagerly than his feeble body suggested. Determined to free Benji, Martha contacted the local animal rescue. Within hours, help arrived. The rescue team, armed with bolt cutters, clipped the chain that had imprisoned Benji for so long. As the rusted metal fell away, so too did the years of neglect and isolation. Benji stepped free, his movements tentative but unchained. Martha adopted Benji, bringing him into her home. In the warmth of Martha's care, Benji's transformation was profound. Each day, his fur grew a bit glossier, his eyes a bit brighter. But more importantly, his spirit, which had endured through years of loneliness, blossomed with love and trust. Martha often said, looking into his grateful eyes, "We saved each other, didn't we, Benji?" This story of Benji and Martha is a testament to the power of empathy and the impact of compassionate action. It reminds us that within our everyday paths and routines lie opportunities to extend kindness and change lives, even with the smallest gestures. It teaches us that no one, not even a forgotten dog behind a rusty chain, should be beyond the reach of compassion, that everyone deserves a second chance at life, at love, at happiness. For the elderly, who often hold reservoirs of wisdom and compassion, it reaffirms that it is never too late to make a difference, to rewrite a fate, to offer a new beginning. Martha, her resolve as steadfast as the old oaks surrounding the dilapidated property, knew she couldn't turn her back on Benji, the German Shepherd who had stretched his paws to her, pleading for a kindness long denied. His touch, faint yet filled with hope, cemented her determination. How could she leave a soul so gentle in such despair? She scanned the dismal yard once more, the sight of the broken-down house and unkempt landscape reflecting the neglect Benji had endured. It wasn't just the physical barriers that trapped him, but the sheer disregard for his well-being by those who passed by, including his owner, who seemed absent in more ways than one. Martha's heart raced as she dialed local animal rescues and shelters, her fingers trembling with urgency. Each unanswered call deepened her frustration. With every ring, she glanced at Benji, whose hopeful eyes watched her every move. The wait was agonizing. She could not, she decided, rely on distant help that might not arrive in time. It was up to her to change Benji's fate. Taking a deep breath, Martha assessed the situation. The gate was locked, a rusty padlock denying entry. Not deterred, she walked the fence line, her eyes searching for any breach. Finally, near the rear of the yard, she found a section where time and weather had done her a small favor, rotting the boards enough to create a gap. With a resolve fueled by the sight of Benji's weakened form, Martha squeezed through the gap, the rough edges scraping against her coat, her hands pressing into the cold dirt. As she emerged on the other side, she was struck by the full gravity of Benji's plight. Standing before him without barriers, she could see every rib, the dullness of his once vibrant fur, and the resigned tilt of his head. "Hey, buddy," she whispered gently, not wanting to startle him. Benji's ears flicked at her voice, a sign of interest, a spark of hope perhaps. Martha slowly crouched down, keeping her movements deliberate and gentle. She extended her hand, palm up, offering Benji the choice to approach. For a moment, Benji hesitated, his instincts warring with his desire for contact. Then, very slowly, he stepped towards her, his chain rattling softly with each timid step. Martha's heart clenched at the sound so mundane yet so heavy with implications. The chain was a cruel fixture, rusted like the lock on the gate, its weight a palpable symbol of Benji's years of pain. Martha's eyes darted to the house again. It loomed silent and seemingly uninhabited. Was anyone even aware of what was happening in their backyard? Anger simmered within her, not just at the abandonment, but at the cruelty of Benji's imprisonment. She couldn't fathom how any person could allow such suffering. Reaching out, Martha let her fingers brush against Benji's head, feeling the coarse reality of his matted fur. Benji flinched initially but didn't retreat. Instead, he leaned into her touch, his body trembling either from cold or perhaps from the unfamiliarity of affection. "You've been waiting a long time for someone, haven't you?" Martha murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Benji's response was a soft nudge against her hand, his eyes locking with hers in a silent acknowledgement of her words. Determined more than ever, Martha knew she couldn't leave him here. She pulled out her phone again, scrolling through her contacts for anyone who might be able to assist at this moment. Time was of the essence, and Benji's life depended on her next actions. This was not just a rescue, it was a moral imperative. As she stood to make another call, the gravity of her decision was clear. She was no longer just a passerby. She was Benji's advocate, his hope, his chance at a new life. And as the late afternoon sun began to set, casting long shadows over the neglected yard, Martha stood firm in her resolve to not only save Benji, but to give him the love and life he had been denied for so long. Martha fought to keep her voice steady as she explained the dire circumstances. "He's barely alive. I had to cut the chain. It was choking him." The officers exchanged a quick glance, their expressions softening as they took in the scene. The animal control worker moved past Martha with a sense of urgency, kneeling beside Benji, who lay limply on the cold ground. As he began assessing the dog, Martha relayed the details hurriedly, her words tumbling out in a desperate cascade. "He's been neglected, possibly, for years. I found him just in time. He couldn't even stand when the chain was removed," she explained, her hands gesturing frantically towards Benji. The animal control worker nodded, his professional demeanor a slight comfort in the midst of the chaos. He gently examined Benji, checking his vitals and looking over the wounds that marred his body. His touch was careful, each move calculated to comfort rather than intimidate the weakened animal. As this was happening, one of the officers approached Martha. "We'll need to take a statement from you, ma'am. Can you tell us everything from the beginning?" he asked, his voice kind but firm. Martha complied, recounting the discovery of Benji, her initial call to the shelters, and her decision to intervene directly when no help was available. As she spoke, her eyes stayed on Benji, watching every shallow breath he took, praying each one wasn't his last. The officer listened intently, jotting down notes. We'll be investigating the owner. Do you know who lives here? He asked, gesturing towards the neglected house. Martha shook her head. No, I've never seen anyone. It looks abandoned, but Benji was clearly someone's responsibility at some point. Her voice cracked with emotion, her frustration at the situation evident. As they spoke, the animal control worker managed to stabilize Benji enough to move him. With a stretcher ready, they carefully lifted his frail body, his legs dangling lifelessly, a stark reminder of the gravity of his condition. Martha followed closely as they carried him to the vehicle, her heart aching with every step they took. The patrol car and the animal control vehicle prepared to leave, and Martha was assured that Benji would be taken straight to a veterinary hospital. We'll do everything we can for him, the animal control worker promised, offering Martha a small, sympathetic smile. Martha nodded, her gaze lingering on Benji as the doors closed. The sound of the engine starting was a grim reminder that her work here was done, but Benji's journey was just beginning. Left alone in the quiet street, Martha felt a mixture of relief and overwhelming sadness. She had stepped into a situation that many would have avoided, driven by a profound sense of justice and compassion. As the vehicles disappeared, taking Benji to hopefully recover, she knew she'd made a difference, perhaps the difference in a life that had known little kindness. Reflecting on the day's events as she walked back through the gap in the fence, Martha realized the impact one person can have. Her intervention had not only potentially saved Benji's life, but had also set a precedent for accountability and care within her community. This experience, harrowing yet hopeful, reaffirmed her belief in the power of individual action in the face of adversity. Martha's solitary figure, standing in the fading light, was a testament to the resilience both of a woman determined to effect change and a dog who had endured unimaginable neglect. This ordeal had changed her, igniting a fierce determination to advocate for those without a voice. Today, Martha was more than a passerby. She was a rescuer, a protector, a voice for the voiceless. Quickly enough that adoption seemed a tangible next step. Martha, who had inadvertently become Benji's most steadfast advocate. Each day, she was at the shelter when the doors opened, and often she was the last to leave, her heart woven into the fabric of Benji's recovery. One crisp morning, as Martha entered Benji's room at the shelter, she noticed the change wasn't just in his physical strength, but in his demeanor. Where there had once been a timidity, a hesitation born of years of neglect, there now flickered a tentative curiosity about his surroundings. His tail wagged more vigorously today as he noticed Martha approaching. His ears perked up, a soft whine of recognition escaping him as she neared. "How are you today, Benji?" Martha asked, her voice a soothing balm. She knelt beside him, her fingers gently exploring his thicker, healthier coat. The veterinarians had done wonders, she thought, not just healing his wounds, but restoring a vibrancy to his eyes. As she sat there, the veterinarian, Dr. Jensen, approached with a smile. "He's making remarkable progress," he commented, watching Benji nuzzle Martha's hand. "It's not just the medical treatment. It's you, Martha. Your visits have done more for him than any medicine could." Martha looked at Benji, her eyes moist with unshed tears. "Do you think he's ready?" she asked, the idea of taking him home having grown in her mind, a seed watered by their growing bond. Dr. Jensen nodded. "I'd say he's more than ready. He needs a home now, a real one. And I can't think of anyone better than you, Martha." The suggestion settled over Martha with a weight of profound responsibility mixed with undeniable joy. "I'll need to prepare," she said, already thinking of the small adjustments her home would require to welcome a large dog like Benji. "You'll do fine," Dr. Jensen assured her, "and Benji will help. He's quite the resilient fellow." Over the next few weeks, Martha's visits became more about preparation than mere companionship. She and Benji would spend hours in the play area, walking or simply sitting together, Benji's head often finding its way onto her lap, his eyes closing in contentment as she stroked him. The day she brought him home, Martha felt a nervous excitement she hadn't known in years. Benji explored every inch of his new home with a cautious enthusiasm. Watching him, Martha felt a swell of pride. He had come so far from the terrified, chained creature she'd found. That evening, as they sat together in her living room, Benji resting by the fire Martha had lit in his honor, She reflected on the journey they had undertaken together. It was more than just a rescue. It was a mutual revival. Martha had saved Benji, yes, but in many ways, Benji had saved her too, filling the quiet spaces of her life with his gentle presence. Martha realized that saving Benji was her stepping into a larger world of advocacy, of fighting for those who couldn't voice their pain. She started to plan more actively, engaging with local shelters, and becoming an advocate for neglected animals. Her life had gained a new purpose, a new direction, and as she looked at Benji, his chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep, she knew this was just the beginning. Through Benji, Martha learned the power of second chances, not just for the dog she aimed to save in the future, but for herself. Each day with Benji was a reminder that kindness, patience, and a little bit of courage could rewrite any fate. The day Martha finalized Benji's adoption felt surreal, a culmination of countless moments filled with tender care and growing affection. As she waited in the shelter lobby, clutching the leash that would soon tether Benji to his new life, her heart raced with anticipation and a trace of nervous excitement. This wasn't just about paperwork, it was about commitment. Benji, once a symbol of neglect, was about to become a testament to second chances. Martha watched eagerly as a shelter worker led Benji from the back. The transformation was remarkable. While still on the lean side, the once dull fur now had a nascent gloss, and his stride carried a newfound strength. But it was his eyes that showed the most profound change. Gone was the pervasive sadness, replaced by a gleam of hope, a reflection of the life that awaited him beyond the shelter's walls. As Benji approached, his tail wagged with genuine enthusiasm, a stark contrast to the tentative flicks of their early encounters. Martha crouched down, opening her arms, and Benji didn't hesitate. He pressed his body against hers, his familiar weight a comfort to her knees. "Hey, buddy, you ready?" she whispered into his ear. Benji's response was to nuzzle deeper, his actions speaking louder than words. Martha laughed, a sound mingled with tears of joy, as she led him outside to her car. The concept of a car ride was foreign to Benji. His life had been confined to the misery of a chained existence, far from such simple pleasures. Martha coaxed him gently, assuring him with soft words as he cautiously stepped into the vehicle. As they drove away from the shelter, Benji sat quietly in the back seat, his eyes wide as he observed the world rushing by. Trees, buildings, people, each was a marvel to him, each a slice of life he had never been allowed to enjoy. Martha watched him through the rearview mirror, her heart swelling with pride at his bravery in facing the unknown. Upon arriving home, Martha introduced Benji to his new domain. Her apartment was modest, but filled with warmth and waiting comforts. A plush dog bed by the sofa, a new set of toys, and bowls filled with fresh water and food. She gave him space to explore, to take in the scents and sights of his new home. Benji moved through each room with careful steps, occasionally pausing to sniff curiously at this new environment that was so different from the barren yard of his past. Eventually, Benji came to rest at Martha's feet, looking up at her with eyes that spoke volumes of trust and acceptance. Martha reached down, stroking his head, each touch reaffirming their bond. "You're home now, Benji?" she murmured softly. "For good." In the weeks that followed, Benji blossomed. His coat filled out, his ribs no longer sharply defined beneath his skin. His eyes lost the haunted look of yore, shining instead with vitality and eagerness. Each morning, he greeted Martha with a wagging tail, eager for their daily walks, a ritual that delighted them both. At night, he would curl up next to her on the couch, his head resting in her lap, fully at ease, fully at home. Martha often reflected on their journey from the moment she found him, a neglected creature longing for rescue, to the companion he had become. She realized that their paths were meant to intersect, that perhaps they had saved each other in ways neither could have anticipated. Benji taught her about resilience and the healing power of love, while she gave him a life worthy of his loyalty and spirit. Their story, a heartwarming tale of redemption and mutual rescue, serves as a poignant reminder of the impact compassion can have. It underscores the transformative power of giving and receiving second chances, not just for abandoned animals, but for anyone willing to open their heart. Martha and Benji's journey is a testament to the belief that everyone deserves a chance to find their place in the world, to feel safe, loved, and home at last. If this story touches your heart, remember, it's never too late to change a life, be it animal or human. Every act of kindness creates ripples that extend far beyond the initial splash. In the intricate tapestry of modern life, where individualism often prevails and communal bonds can fray, the story of Martha and Benji brings forth a powerful reminder of the profound impact compassion can have on both giver and receiver. This narrative isn't just about rescuing an animal. It's a vivid metaphor for the transformative power of kindness that applies universally, from human relationships to broader societal interactions. In our fast-paced world, it's all too easy to walk past the Benjis of society, those in need, whether due to neglect, poverty, or misfortune, without a second glance. Like Martha, however, we each have the potential to recognize pain that others overlook and to take action that others might hesitate to undertake. The act of stopping, of choosing to help, can seem like a small gesture amid the overwhelming tide of daily responsibilities and stresses. Yet, these moments where we pause to extend a helping hand can ripple outward, significantly altering the lives of others while enriching our own. Martha's decision to adopt Benji did more than change the trajectory of a neglected dog's life. It altered her own path, imbuing it with renewed purpose and empathy. Similarly, when we choose to engage genuinely with those around us, to truly listen and respond to the needs of our community members, we not only foster a sense of belonging and safety, but also strengthen the social fabric that connects us. Each act of kindness, each decision to not ignore the plight of another, reinforces the notion that community is about support and connection, not just proximity. Moreover, Benji's transformation under Martha's care illustrates the profound effects of providing a nurturing environment. This parallels the human need for a supportive community that values each individual's potential. Just as Benji thrived once, given a stable and loving home, people flourish when they find themselves in encouraging and affirmative surroundings. The lesson here extends into realms such as education, workplace culture, and community development, emphasizing that the environments we create can either stifle or promote growth and well-being. This story also serves as a call to reevaluate how we address the needs of the marginalized and the voiceless in our society. It challenges us to ask if we are walking past someone who, with a little attention and aid, could find new strength and purpose. It urges leaders and policymakers to consider how laws, services, and community programs can better serve as lifelines for those on the margins. Ultimately, the story of Martha and Benji is a reminder that change often starts with a single act of kindness. By adopting the ethos that every individual, whether a forgotten dog or a neighbor in distress, deserves compassion and a chance at a better life, we can contribute to a more caring and connected world. In doing so, we not only change lives, but also define the essence of what it means to be part of a community, to see, to care, and to act. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable spirit of life. See you in the next story.